Pyro Unleashed presents the Finale3D Tip of the Week, sponsored by Finale Fireworks.
All right, here we are, episode 8.
Episode number 8, yeah, this is getting good now.
Going good. We're hitting episodes pretty much every week now, and yeah, really thankful for the viewership already so far.
Yep.
It seems to be blowing up pretty good. So, all right. Let's start touching on. I know there was a little sneak peek last week of some single shot shapes. So, I don't know. Do you have any ideas of different single shot shapes we can try and do, like waves or sweeps or anything along those lines, Donnie?
No, I just obviously you see a lot of some zigzag patterns. You see a lot of these different like little things that look like they're moving in motion. Like the I look back at Nate's PGI show, right? He had the little heart that kind of like simulated. And so I'm just looking for Drew for some ways to kind of automate some of these sweeps and slices and sequences so that I'm not manually dropping them in one by one and trying to align them. Like
yeah, it can take up some time for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's script some sequences, as we would call it, patterns of single shots. So I think it's worth mentioning out of the gate that the ability to do this largely depends on the shoot site at your disposal, right? Yep. So
yeah, correct.
So if you're shooting in your backyard and your backyard's 100 feet wide, you're going to be a little bit more limited on what you can do. So Finale's default, I'm going to switch to the top view here and just unlock these positions so we can see the rulers. So, Finale's default show is 320 feet wide, positions that are about 40 feet apart roughly. So what we can do with this is a lot different than what we could do with a kind of a smaller area.
Yeah.
But you can do cool single shot patterns either way. So imagine you've only got, one position to work with. You can still create a pattern of single shots. You're just not going to be, you're going to be restricted to something that's using a fan as opposed to something that's, panoramically spread over a large number of positions, on the ground left to right on your shoot site. So, as an example of something you could do from a single position, we could go ahead and just drop in one comet. Looks like that, pretty boring. And then we can use some tools to automate. So to Donnie's point about automation, like, you can keep clicking and you can keep adding comments. And okay, so now I have, go ahead and put these at the same time for now. Now I've got 2 in here, and if I select one of them, I can angle it, and then I can keep clicking and I can angle it more. And I can keep doing that, and I can build myself a fan, and that's it's gonna be cool, but there is an easier way. So I'm just doing undo here to get back to one comment. And I'm a really huge fan of this option here. Duplicate into flights. And shortcuts are huge. So if you want to script proficiently, be quick and making, kind of getting your vision from your imagination onto the page, as it were, then, learning some of these keyboard shortcuts can really help you. So for example, duplicating the difference between duplicating the pairs and duplicating the flights is the one that gives you the ability to specify the exact number you want.
Okay.
If I choose this, I can now say, here's a good example, 15, and the angle in between each shot, maybe 10 degrees. That's going to be a lot because 15 devices, 10 degrees in between, it's going to be like 140 degrees, 150 degrees, right? So take a look at it and see what we get. So there we, with one click, entering a couple numbers, you get something like this.
Yeah.
So if this is, more than what you want in terms of angle, now that you've got all the device, the beauty of duplicating the flights is it did the fanning and the duplication all at the same time.
Yeah, okay.
But if you just want to adjust the angle, you can come up and go to script angles, make into fan. I probably said this before in a previous episode, but like the F key on my keyboard is totally worn off. Like it's a very, very common, very common shortcut. So make into a fan. You can see there we have 140 degrees.
Yeah.
Say we just want 100. And if we've got a rack that's, you might want to specify the interval instead. If you've got a rack that only goes to specific angles, like 5 degree increments, But if you've got a rack that's infinitely adjustable, then you could, of course, specify an exact total angle. Total angle means the angle from the leftmost item all the way to the rightmost. And then you can get, if you've got a way to set that, then you can do that. So there it is. Tighten up a little bit, right? So
I'm the king at setting these, and then my crew get out there and they're like 7-degree angles. Like, what is this?
7.1.
Right?
Yeah.
I think we do.
Yeah,
have
on the
some
labels it gets rounded to the nearest degree. But to your point, Donnie, exactly. So the reason's because, the finale is not gonna stop you, so why not, right? So so we've got a fan of single shots there. So that's cool. Like, you're gonna get people knocked off their seats if they're in their backyard watching a show. So it's not too bad.
Yeah.
This is all these comments are firing all together at this moment. So to make them into a sequence, a durational sequence, there's many ways to do this, but one way I think that's underappreciated and not well known is that you can move your mouse over this last guy here at the bottom. There's this little bracket, and if you move your mouse near it, you'll see a vertical bar that forms. You can just click and drag. And so we're stretching out the firing of these items.
Mm-hmm.
So if I go like this, now what I've created is a sequence that fires from left to right. When you're dragging like that, there's no way to choose right to left versus left to right.
Oh, okay.
But you just, you get something like that. So I think that's especially useful when you've got a segment of music where you start the sequence where you've got a certain, hitting a certain note and you're ending the sequence on another note. So like, spreading it out based on the waveform of the music, that can be really handy, right?
Yeah.
That's a cool way to do that.
If you want a specific interval between the items, then that's where you go up to script sequences. And if you want ultimate control, if you just want to spread them out to a specific interval, you can do spread out evenly. But if you want ultimate control about the direction and the pattern, do make into sequence. So that's S on the keyboard. And here I can specify the exact duration, the exact interval. So if I want, exactly 0.1 seconds between each, I can just enter that. And then here's where I can choose left to right. A lot of people get confused because there's no right to left.
Yeah.
That's because the effort there is to make the menu shorter.
Yeah.
So any of these things can be reversed just by choosing reverse. So if I want right to left, I just choose reverse order. I don't need to worry about this guy right now. So there we go. And now we've got exactly 1/10 of a second and we're going right to left.
Nice.
Hit S on my keyboard to bring that back up. And I can say, something like center to outside and get something like this. So
very good.
When you're making sequences, your timeline fills up with a lot of events. Each one of these little lines is called an event. So it gets pretty busy. And this is where it can be really handy to group things together. So like we've got, we've almost filled our script window here with these 15 lines of script. And we've got these 15 events on the timeline. We come up to script, groups, combine as group. This just kind of buttons these together just for the purpose of staying organized while you're designing. Doesn't affect how your show is addressed or anything like that. But so now I've taken this single shot sequence and I've buttoned that up. Normally I turned this off earlier. Normally, show one row per group is turned on in the script. So then you see this one line in the timeline, this one line in the script. Doesn't change, doesn't change how your show gets addressed or, nothing's gone. It's just all kind of buttoned up organizationally for you in the scripting timeline.
While it is grouped, can you change that sequence or do you have to ungroup it to change the sequence?
It depends on what you want to do, but you can. So for example, if I go back into, select these guys and go back into here, let's change it to 0.2. So there I just,
so
you can, it just kind of depends what you want to do. There's pros and cons to both. Like if you have multiple grouped sequences and you you sequence those, then it can treat them as groups. It can treat each one as a separate thing. So it kind of depends on what you want, but you can also edit a sequence without tearing it apart. So you can say a group, a sequence in a group. So you can say edit group and then it pops open the group. Now you can work on it within here. I didn't have to ungroup it.
Gotcha.
I get this sort of sub timeline where I can see just this group. And when I'm done tinkering with this, I can just hit the little X and I'm back to
nice.
Nice. That's cool.
that option. So the reason I wanted to button these up is because I want to show how easy it is to, to duplicate these. So now that I have this one, I can use copy and paste or just hold control on my keyboard and click and drag. And then, I've got two of these guys. And now they're on the same position. Of course, if you're in your backyard and you've only got one position, then that's what you got. But you can also click and drag on the trajectory dots here in the simulation view, and that allows you to go to a different position. And I'm holding control on my keyboard, so that's cloning. So now if I go, if I do something like this, let's go ahead and bring this one. I don't want them too close together. I'm holding control, click and drag, holding control, click and drag, and now. So, if you've got a pattern that you like, you can reuse that. You can duplicate it, you can clone it, you can copy and paste it, and then you could take these and you can stretch these when they're grouped up as well. Or you can do something like go up to script C. And Donnie, this is what I was talking about, how it happens when you're when you have groups. You go ahead and spread these out. Say something like 5, and then it spreads them out, but it keeps their time intervals internal, but then spreads them out, the groups. So, something like that. So, that's an idea. So that's kind of starting with what can you do on each position kind of thing,
Yeah.
Let's do a sequence. So imagine you have actually a frontage, as it were, like a series of positions that you can shoot from. So we'll drop in some more comments here. Now we're shooting. I kind of skipped over something important there. I hit all positions because I only have this row of positions in my show. You can also shift click to select these guys, but you can add a bunch of items to the show at the same time if you want them on different positions. So whatever positions are selected is where the items go in. So because I've selected 9 positions, I get these 9 items dropped on the timeline. So now all I have to do to create a chase from left to right is just drag that bracket there a little bit like we did when we were just using one position. And now we've got a nice chase from left to right. So you can angle things by dragging the trajectory dots. I think we've done that a little bit before, but that can make some even more dynamic, kind of basic there. One I really love is what I call the bouncing sequence. So I'll start fresh here. Imagine you want a sequence that chases left to right and then back.
And back,
maybe 4 times. So to do that, you would need 9 times however many back and forths you want. So let's say you wanted 4 times 9, so you need 36. So you go 9, 18, 27, 36. Select all these, hit S to sequence. We'll do a 1/10 of a second interval, and we'll say produce multiple cycles bouncing. And it says, okay, great, you'll do 4 cycles. Now we had to add enough shots ahead of time for that, enough effects for it to do that. Otherwise it won't work. So you gotta put in the number of the effects that are needed and then select them and then come into sequence and choose produce multiple cycles bouncing, right? So click enter, and Finale is recognizing that it's shooting from left to right and then back from right to left. It's offering to remove the comments at the end so they're not kind of doubled up. I'll click no.
I was going to ask about that,
So here, if we kind of zoom in, you'll see there's 2 comments firing. So when it goes over here and then turns back, we're getting 2 comments are doubled up. And often it's the case that you don't want that. You just want it to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and not fire on position 9 twice. So if you do that again and you click yes, Finale is actually deleting some items. Notice we're down from 36 items to 33 items because we have 3 turnarounds, right? So now you get this. So it's still straight up. It's not parabolics and fancy angles or anything, but it's pretty cool. And that's a really automated way, the most efficient way, I think, to make a sequence like that. So I'd like to demo that. Let's level up. So talk about, doing some what people call parabolics. I used to call them like crashing comets. I don't hear people saying that as much anymore. That's kind of what I used to call it, maybe just what I thought it looked like the first time I saw it, sort of like waves crashing, you know?
Yeah.
So this is where it gets a little tricky, because when you make a fan in Finale, the way the fan function works currently is that it's symmetrical, right? You get, the angles. So if we fan these, I'll hit F to fan and just put 10 degrees between them. You get a symmetrical fan like that.
Yep.
You can now drag them to get something asymmetrical, right? So to get something like this. And that's a way to make, a kind of sequence that's asymmetrical, which is really what we're going for. To make the one that I think people think of the most, you would want to create an inward fan. So we'll go like this, inward fan, and we get something like this. And again, we get something symmetrical. So we need to drag these trajectory dots to create the sort of asymmetric, parabolic, curve to the left. The more positions you have, the better the curve, the better the look. I have 9 positions, this is what I can get. So I like to drag, this is a trick I use. If I'm going to drag these guys to the left, I like to grab the comet on the right, because, I want to make sure when I'm done, this isn't shooting into the ground. So I like to choose the angle of the comet that's angled the most, and then let the other ones flow as they might, right? So you got something like that.
Where has this been all my life?
So
Been sitting there.
if you wanted to do the exact same thing in the opposite direction right now, what I recommend is building it in an open area of the timeline and then bringing it back. So I'll show what I mean by that. So we'll take this, we'll hold Control, click and drag, and now we have it over here again. And then we'll just grab it and go the other way. And again, I like to grab the leftmost one because we're going to the right, so I can get that angle that I want for the max angle there. And then if I want these, if I want them to be separate, then, there we go, to the left, to the right. But if I want them to be at the same time, I'll just click on that Q marker and drag it back. So instead of trying to build it all together, build it in 2 halves and then put it together like that.
Yeah.
So really the sky's the limit, pun intended, with this kind of stuff. So, there's no real limit to what you can do, and it's just a matter of your imagination and mastering these, some of these menu items. So, knowing how to group things can help a lot, because like once I put these together, right? Like what if I need to tease them apart to make an adjustment? Hard to do now. But if I had grouped these, these guys press G, group these guys press G. Now they're still kind of separate in a way where I can grab each set if I need to, right? So premeditating that is helpful. Learning how to fan things. There's a lot of other little fan tools. None of them are nearly as useful in most situations. Mirroring is pretty handy. You can tell like something's popular or common or likely to be used a lot when it has just a single a shortcut that's a single keystroke, right? As opposed to these down here where it's like you got to push 3 different things and have 14 fingers on your hand to get it done. Mirroring is really handy. I can give a quick example of that. So
absolutely,
maybe you make a fan like, let's just make a fan of 5 and put them like this. And then maybe we want something like, we want to shoot these guys. Let's do 40 degrees. And I'm going to just drag them over here. If I don't hold Control on my keyboard, I'm not duplicating, I'm just moving them over. And then now I'll hold Control and drag these over here. Yep. And I could, of course, just drag the trajectory dots, but I can also just go up to Script, Angles, and choose Mirror. The difference between Mirror and Invert is Invert means down into the ground.
180.
Okay.
It sort of mirrors around the horizontal axis, whereas inverting, mirrors around the horizontal axis, whereas mirroring mirrors around the vertical axis is kind of a good way to think of it.
Okay.
So now you get something like this. So that was kind of a simple example where we could have just dragged it, but if you've got a lot going on, you got something like this, you can use mirroring to, for something like this, I can mirror by doing that. And that's the mirror of that. So we could combine. Let me bring the playhead over here. It'll make more sense. This is a little bit like lack of imagery that would make it not necessarily
That's interesting, actually.
ideal, but yeah, I mean, there's no limit to what do. So we've gotten some really good requests. I mean, most Finale features are based on requests. We've gotten some requests to add a function that would allow you to like flip. So, when we made this, the way I did it was I literally copied it and then factories, but mirroring is not the same as flipping.
Yeah.
So to flip that whole sequence around is something I see in the future. We'll add a tool to do that.
Wonderful.
So yeah, that's some. You guys have ideas for other sequences you'd like to see, or I think that's a wrap.
I think this is a great spot to wrap this up, man. I mean, I think, I learned a ton right there. The grouping and just how to drag those angles around, make those parabolics as simple as we did. Like, I would go there to my parabolics. I'd set each one 10 degrees as I kind of moved across the field, and it took so much time. This will save me a lot of time, and there's a lot of great stuff there. I think that people will find useful in that section, because I think we get I see a lot of questions around that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, and you got to keep in mind, like, if you're using Finale as a video game, like, it doesn't matter what the angles are. But if you're trying to translate this into the real world, you really got to know your product.
Yeah.
Because the look that you're going to achieve is going to be a function of how far these comets travel and what the spacing is between your positions.
Yeah.
So you've got to know your product, both for a performance and a safety, for performance and safety reasons. And you've got to know your equipment. So if your equipment doesn't have unlimited adjustability, if you're using a rack that has 5 or 10 degree increments, and you got to be aware of that. And you've got to that's where, Donnie, I actually think it gets a little harder, because Finale is going to build this perfectly beautiful thing, but then you might have to tweak the angles manually, potentially, by typing in the in the tilt column, for example, in some cases, to try to get it to work in the racks you own. Or maybe you're just not a guy that wants to go to 7.42 degrees, so you're trying to get it near 5 degrees or something, Yeah,
absolutely. All right.
Yep. Perfect. All right. Well, I want to thank you again, Drew, for coming on with us again this week. As always, go to pyrounleashedpodcast.com, grab yourself some merch. And with that, I'll leave it to you, Donnie.
Yep. You guys will catch us again next Wednesday for another great episode. Again, catch us on these Fridays for this Finale tip with Drew. And in the meantime, go out there and unleash your inner pyro with us.
This has been another episode of Pyro Unleashed. Come back each week for more industry insights, technical tips, and awesome pyro designs. Have fun out there, be safe, and as always, remember to unleash your inner pyro with us.